What's going on, everyone? It's Mr. West. I hope we're all well. So welcome to my OnePlus 6 camera review. So I've been using the OnePlus 6 alongside the Huawei P20 as my daily companion for around about the last 3 weeks, and it's been a really excellent phone with some great imaging capabilities. However, as of this morning, we've had a software update pushed to the OnePlus 6 which improves the focus across the image and also adds bokeh or portrait mode to the front-facing camera. So very much like the Huawei P20 video, what we're going to do is concentrate on video for the first part of the test. We'll take a walk through the UI as well, then do the rear camera video test, and at the end of this video, I'll show a selection of still images which I've taken with the OnePlus 6. So we're just going to start with the front camera video. So this records up to 1080p at 30 frames per second. You can also record in the slightly wider option, which is 18:9, which does crop in the image just a little bit more. So you need to be careful with your framing. So the front camera does have electronic image stabilization. Now, one tip for you when you're actually using the front video on the OnePlus 6 is don't be put off by what you're seeing in the viewfinder, because the phone is doing all the clever work in the background to stabilize the image for you. So we can see basically the exposure level is pretty good on this grass behind us. You tell me, I can't see it all of the time. However, it does appear to be a bit better than what I've tested on the Huawei P20, which does tend to soften the grass behind us. Now, the exposure is pretty good as well. So you see some of the blue sky behind us here with the clouds as well, which is a good sign. So we're just doing the same route as we did with the Huawei P20 in that test. And so far, it's looking pretty good. I do notice the crop is very, very close with the OnePlus 6 compared to the Huawei P20. So you have to be careful with your framing when you're using the video. So just going to go up to our little man-made path here, and we're going to have a little sprint with the phone and see how well it does with stabilization from the front-facing camera. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, go. So that is the stabilization from the front-facing camera. Again, it's quite off-putting when you're actually recording the video because you can't actually see what is happening. But rest assured, when the video is played back, some sorcery will have happened in the background and you'll be able to see exactly how good it looks. So we're just going to take a stop now and look at the camera UI, and then we'll move on to the rear camera video and show you all of the options that are available. Okay, so this is the OnePlus 6 camera UI. This is what you'll see when you buy this handset, or if you're looking to buy this phone, this is how it all works. So this is a much more simplified option compared to what is on the Huawei P20. However, having owned OnePlus devices previously, OnePlus does give you a very easy to use photographic UI, which allows you to take some really good shots very, very simply. So starting at the top left side of the screen, we'll work our way around to the right. So starting with the flash, this allows you to have it as automatic, off completely, or on all of the time. We've then got options for your aspect ratio, so set to 4:3 by standard. You also have this very wide but heavily cropped in 19:9 mode. You then got the 1:1 option then, which is great for social sharing and slightly squarer pictures. So we'll put it back to 4:3. Then got the option for HDR. Now this is a tip that I learned from my YouTube buddy Gavin Fabiani-Layman. He says to leave the HDR to auto and just let the Snapdragon 845 chip do the rest, and he is absolutely correct. If you leave this to on automatically, it does over sharpen or does leave a lot of shadows in the picture, whereas leave it to auto and just let it make its own mind up and let the SD845 do the rest, you do get some really excellent images. And then we've got the timer option at the bottom here as well, which is for 3, 5 or 10 seconds depending on your preference. So moving over to the right hand side of the screen, we've got the gallery here. So this is your last photo. We've got the capture button, you just press that, that's how that works. And then we've got the toggle for the front or rear cameras as well. So underneath here, we've got the video option. So we'll just do a very quick look through that. So we've got the option here for your video resolutions. So I'm currently in 4K at 60 frames per second. We've then got 4K at 30 frames per second. We've then got 1080p at 60 frames per second, 1080p at 30, and 720p at 30 frames per second. Now the image stabilization works in slightly different ways depending on what option you've got selected, which I'll talk you through in a moment when we're going through the back video camera showcase. So then we've got the portrait mode. So this is really cool. However, I do find that the shaping effect around your subject is a little bit aggressive, and sometimes when you're taking the portrait shot, it doesn't look like it's going to actually work. It looks very, very blurry, but trust me, when the photos do come out, they do look really, really good. So this is one that I took a little bit earlier on, which I'll show you now. So this is one of some flowers which are just done there. The focus isn't perfect, however it does still manage to get quite a good looking image. It looks quite dramatic with the very heavy bokeh in the background. And then we've got the additional options. So if you just push the arrow there, so we've looked at the first three options at the top, which is video, photo and portrait. You've then got slow motion. So we've got 1080p at 240 frames per second, or 720p at 480 frames per second. We've then got the Pro mode, so this allows you pretty much manual control over every aspect of the sensors. So we've got exposure, focus, shutter speed, white balance, and then your ISO levels, and pretty much it allows you lots and lots of control. We go right the way down to 100 ISO, and we go all the way up to 3200, and the white balance is currently doing its thing. And the shutter speed then, that is great for low light shots, so you can set the shutter speed to pretty much how you want it, right down to maybe like 5 seconds, 2 seconds, what have you. Okay, and obviously the exposure level is pretty much as you'd imagine it, so we leave that in auto. So coming back out of there, then I've got time lapse. So again, this is done at 1080p, and I would heavily suggest using a tripod for time lapse because it's not going to work if you're doing lots of things handheld. And then we've got the panorama modes, which strangely you have to turn the phone up into portrait mode rather than landscape, which you get on the Huawei P20. So that is the additional options, and that is basically everything you will find in the camera UI. So I'm just going to show you a quick example of how it takes photos. Now, this has had a recent software update which has improved the autofocus quite considerably. Previously there was a small issue with focus right in the center of the image. So if we just look at these buttercups here, now it's very, very overexposed because of the sunlight. But if we just, yep, so the focus is a lot better now. Previously it would sit around hunting for it for quite a while. So yeah, that's pretty quick. And if we just take a snap of that, it takes a really nice shot. I do think the photo's a little bit oversaturated, but it's nothing that can't be helped with a little bit of editing in Photoshop Express later on. But the images are very, very pleasing. So we'll just go for the portrait mode now. So as I said, it does seem a little bit aggressive. So when you're doing this, it doesn't look like it's going to take a very good photo. But if we just take a shot of that, and then we have a look, it's not too bad. I think the bokeh is a little bit aggressive, to be perfectly honest, but it's nothing that can't be fixed with a future firmware update. So that is it for the camera UI. We're now going to go to the rock in the distance. Okay, so before we do the rear camera video test, I'm just going to run down very quickly through some of the highlight specs of the sensors. So we've got a primary 16 megapixel sensor which has optical and electronic image stabilization. It has HDR, it's also a two-tone flash, and there's also a secondary 20 megapixel sensor which isn't stabilized, but OnePlus tells us it helps with portrait and night mode shots and also low light. We've got geo-tagging, we've got phase detection, autofocus, auto HDR, and also face detection built in as well. So we're going to explain how the stabilization works in each of these modes. So we're currently in 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now, I didn't want to use 720p because nobody uses that, so we're just going to go for a quick walk here. Okay, so in 1080p mode, this is at 30 frames per second. So at the moment, the OnePlus 6 primary sensor is using its optical image stabilization to try and give us a stable image. Now, it's not too bad, but there does seem to be quite a lot of shaking when I'm looking through the viewfinder. It doesn't seem to be as bad as the Huawei P20. Now, for context, it wasn't bad, it just wasn't as good as I thought it probably could have been for that phone. But looking at the image as a whole, exposure is good in the sky, and we've got nice greens and lots of lovely foliage all around us here, which is being captured really well with these cameras. So far, so good. So we've got a slightly more straight path here. I'm going to try my best to try and see what's through the viewfinder with this blazing sun. So we're just going to take a walk up to the man-made path now. We'll just go for a little jog and test out the optical stabilization in 1080p, 30 frames per second. Okay. Okay, so we return at 1080p at 60 frames per second. So we're just going to go up to the path and just go for a quick sprint. And we'll see how the optical stabilization, works in this mode. Here we go. And that is it. That is the 1080p 60 frames per second. Okay, last part now, we're going to take a look at 4K at 30 frames per second, and then finally 4K at 60. Okay, so this is 4K at 30 frames per second. Now, as in the OnePlus 5 and OnePlus 5T, and also the OnePlus 3 and 3T, UHD video at 30 frames per second is only supported for up to 10 minutes recording time. So this again is using electronic image stabilization, and once again it sure doesn't look like it from where I am, but I trust that the software will do its stuff a bit further on in this process to the gallery. We're just going to go for a quick jog and see how this works. That is the video at 4K with electronic image stabilization. Okay, last one, 4K at 60. Okay, so this is now set to 4K 60 frames per second, and this allows you up to 5 minutes recording time in this resolution. So I'm just going to go for a walk. So this uses optical image stabilization instead of electronic stabilization, and it's pretty good. Again, not a huge fan of 60 frames per second for recording. It's great for sport and fast moving detail, which I suppose is what it was invented for. However, it doesn't have much cinematic quality to it, but it is no mean feat for a smartphone at this price level to be delivering smooth and detailed 4K video at 60 frames per second for up to 5 minutes. Now, yes, I know the iPhone does it for longer. However, I really can't moan at this price point. So, got some lovely detail here, and again, this motion is butter smooth, obviously with it being 60 frames per second. Got some nice exposure in the sky there in the background as well, not too blown out, and the greens and the foliage of this pretty common do look really nice. Fair play. So we're just going to keep walking. Okay, so we're just going to go up to the small path up here. Okay, so that is it. So a slight correction, which I do believe I made a boo-boo on. I do recall mentioning in the UI part of the video that you can do 19:9 for the front-facing camera. It turns out you can't. You just get this more standard 4:3 ratio, which is not a bad thing anyway, but the 19:9 option is just for the rear camera. I really do hope you've enjoyed this OnePlus 6 camera test. We'll be moving over to the still images section in a few moments. However, if you enjoyed this, please don't forget to like this video, and also share this with your friends, and also subscribe so you don't miss more great videos coming soon. Again, as these are a new style of video format, any suggestions, improvements or comments that you have, and please leave those in the comment section, and everything will be taken on board, and if you're lucky, your idea may be included in a future video. Again, these are new. The only way to improve is take on suggestions and your feedback, so it always is gratefully received. But for now, this has been my OnePlus 6 camera review. Do hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you guys later.